All right, Joe. I appreciate your time so much. You're one of my honestly favorite people. Even though the funny thing is, I feel like we have an awesome relationship, even though you never actually worked directly in my office. But I want to just give you some time to start off and kind of just tell your story and a little about yourself. So take it from there.
Yeah, no, first off, it's a pleasure to be on with you, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so my story, I got started selling Cutco June 2017. It was right after my freshman year of college. I didn't expect to like sales or be good at it, but I got a letter in the mail, and the pay was better than being a camp counselor, and it sounded like it would look better on my resume than camp counselor. Felt like I missed the internship boat, and this was sort of like a chance to get back on the boat. And it turned out I really liked sales and was good at it. Sold like 9K in my fast start, and then ended up finishing the summer a little over 20K. Finished number 2 in the office out of about 80 reps. Made a ton of money. Learned an absolute ton, not just how to sell, but also how to bet on myself. And like honestly, I would trade my business degree for it. It's like a really good business degree is from at least what's ranked the number one business school in the world, but I would trade it in an instant for that. For that,
Where did you go to school?
I went to Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania. Graduated with 2 degrees there, one from business and one in computer science from the engineering school. And like I use what I learned that summer every single day, way more often than I do my business degree. Fast forward a summer, became a manager, and we did really well according to the numbers too. That was 2018. I don't think that territory has sold more than I did that summer, or at least any managers have sold more and that summer than we did. It was really, really cool. We were top 10 in the nation in new business out of like 500, 600 offices, top 2% performance. But I felt like I could help my reps a lot more if I had more time. Like people were making catchable, correctable mistakes that I just like didn't have the time to help them with. And so that's actually where the idea for Zero, my current company, came from. It was, hey, what if we could shrink the conversations down from an hour just to 5 minutes, bookmark, where people are doing goal sharing, where they're building rapport, closing, asking for referrals, so we can help people on those key places where people make mistakes that can kill deals. And that's where the idea for Zero came from when I got started on Zero. And since then, we've raised about $18 million for Zero. My co-founder also sold Cutco and had a computer science degree. We have like 22 people now, several $1,000,000 of annual recurring revenue. And we've helped people earn as much as $40,000 extra per year as salespeople. So it's been really, really cool.
Awesome. Did you always have the business like double major, or is that something that like shifted?
So when I first started at Cutco, I just had the engineering major, and then from my freshman to sophomore year, I added the business degree.
That's all. Yeah. So you knew you wanted to go into like computer science type, that type of stuff. I'm pretty sure your dad does that, right?
Yep.
And wasn't he maybe one of the people that actually kind of like suggested that you did sales, even though you didn't necessarily think that sales was for you?
Yeah. So he ended up coming around to it and seeing the value, because at the end of the day, like sometimes he has the best idea, but he can't sell it in a meeting. And so they end up making the wrong decision. It costs him a bunch of time, nights up until 2 a.m. because they made the wrong call, and costs them more money. It's less efficient. And that's a huge pain. But initially my dad was like, no, you shouldn't do that thing.
That's funny.
It's like kind of like it sounds scammy. You're going to get burned. And eventually the only reason he let me do it was because he thought it would be better for me to find out it was a mistake and get burned on my own than him shielding me from it. And then ended up proving him wrong, making a ton of money. And then like several years later, I'm running one of the hottest tech startups in New York City. So,
yeah. And honestly, that's the biggest thing. I don't know if you saw, I posted a link for the guy who started the sock company, Bonobos or whatever. It's like it was on Shark Tank, and they did they've done over $1 million or $1 billion in revenue, and he worked here. And he said, like, obviously I learned how to sell, but I learned how to cast a vision. I learned how to, communicate and inspire. And like, obviously you went to a really good school and stuff, but that hands-on experience of just actually learning how to manage and coach and train and teach and that type of stuff is something that probably helped you immensely in getting your company off the ground, right?
I mean, yeah, look, like 90% of my job is selling and storytelling. You can call it communication or you can call it selling. They're the same exact thing. Maybe you just call it persuasion, but it's 90% of what I do. And because I'm selling the vision of the company to the people in the company, selling the goals, like the specific things we're doing right now to achieve that vision to the company. I'm selling the company to people I'm recruiting, which is arguably the most important thing that I do. And I learned how to recruit, by the way, at Cutco. I'm selling the company to investors. And then, of course, I'm selling the product to potential buyers. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm training other people either to sell it directly or to train their reps on how to sell it. I mean, it's sales, training, coaching, recruiting, all the stuff I did at Cutco, all the way down. Really, the only thing that I use that I didn't learn from Cutco is how to code. But you don't really need to learn how to code to start a business. And working at Cutco gave me an opportunity to code in real life for the first time. The first two softwares I ever coded, I built for Cutco to solve a real problem that I had, used myself, and then sold to other managers in the company. And that's what ended up giving me the confidence to go ahead and take a big swing with Xero. I sold two.
Sorry, I did cut you off. I'm not nearly as like good at coding. I did some web design stuff, and I always tell people that want to learn how to code, like, make a project that you're excited about. And like, you don't need to worry about, obviously there's so many courses and that type of stuff, but there's so many different like resources like School and that type of stuff where it's like, make a project for a website or whatever. And then every time you need to figure out how to do something, just Google, how do I do this in HTML or PHP or CSS or whatever. And you actually doing that, to me, is like the best way to get hands-on actual experience and learning how to make something that you're excited about.
No, you're absolutely right. Like people think that if they didn't start learning how to code in high school, or they didn't go to a top engineering school, didn't get the courses, that they're not going to be able to learn it. The stuff is all online. It's all online. So the material is there. So what's the hard part? The hard part is when your software is not working and there's a bug and you don't understand it and you have to find the fix or find the material like 3 or 4 links down into Google and some Stack Overflow thread. The only thing that gets you to persist through that is actually really caring about what you're building. And the best way to really care about what you're building is to build something that solves a problem that you or your peers have. And maybe you can even make money off of it. And so that's what Cutco gave me that I didn't have, in my traditional, engineering schooling at Penn. And that's really what made me a much better engineer and one who is like confident taking those skills and applying them in a business setting.
And I know you said that at first your dad, thought it was a scam. I'm not going to, obviously, I said this, and I'm probably going to say this in all my interviews. It's different. So everyone is going to be skeptical in some capacity when they first hear about the job. So even though you did have those doubts and you had, naysayers and that type of stuff, why did you decide to give the job a shot?
Yeah. I think I decided to give the job a shot because it seemed like a chance to be paid. It seemed like I could basically promote myself because, if I'm a camp counselor, it doesn't matter if I'm 10 times better at engaging the kids or working way more hours outside, designing like a new game for us to play during the sports field time. Like, I'm still going to make the same $12.50 or $15 or whatever it was an hour. as someone who's doing a bad job. But with this, with the chance to get paid based on how well I perform, I can promote myself, make more money by either getting better or working more. I mean, it's just at bats times batting average, right? I can increase the batting average and I can give myself more at bats to make myself more money. And that part really, really excited me and ended up working out, obviously.
We just posted in her group me that a quote that was like, in sales, you don't get paid by the hour, you get paid for the value you bring to the hour. And I just feel like that's such a shift for, a salesperson or a business owner or an entrepreneur to actually learn how to be productive instead of busy, and their time, be valuable enough where they're not dependent on necessarily the time, but the value that they're bringing and stuff. So how would you say like the job helped you grow or impacted you the most?
Yeah. And this is sort of also the second part answer to the question you just asked, which is like, I continued the first summer despite my dad's skepticism, and my dad eventually came around, obviously pretty quickly. When I was looking at becoming a manager the second summer, my friends in college like basically staged an intervention where they were like, you can't do this job for another summer. You have to get a real internship now, right? Or else you're not going to be able to get a job after college, which was, by the way, not true. I ended up with a software engineering offer to Amazon after like going through that experience. And during the Amazon interviews, they said they really appreciated my breadth of experience. And I had a real numbers I could point to on my resume, not just like I did this or I did X for my responsibility.
I say all the time, actually being able to put results on a resume,
yes,
not just I did this. It's like I created this.
No, yeah. I created X amount of business. I recruited Y amount of people. I was ranked X across all the reps. I was ranked X across all the offices. And even if you were to just describe responsibilities at Cutco, by the way, and you couldn't put the results, the responsibilities still sound way cooler. Like I opened up a new office that didn't exist before and ran a business for a summer with my own expenses and my own revenue. It's like, anyway, so, but the question you asked about like how did I grow? So the reason I went forward, despite the intervention to become a manager, is that despite being at like such a prestigious, let's say, school, I ended up respecting a lot of the people around me at Cutco and looking up to them, wanting to be more like them than I did my peers at school. My peers at school were sort of preparing for investment banking jobs or consulting jobs. And like, those are totally fine. Those are good careers to go into. You'll make money, at least eventually. But people I was surrounded with at Cutco were people who were, selling $1 million worth of Cutco around school, reading 52 books a year, pursuing personal growth, not as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. Really ambitious people taking risks, building businesses, and making a huge impact around them. And so I decided, like, which path am I going to go down? I'm going to go down the path that leads more towards that. And so that's why I decided to persist and go forward as a manager. And then what did I get from it? Like, just knowing how to sell is freaking enormous. Again, I can't overstate the importance of doing that. No matter what career you're in, you need it. And the further you advance in it, the more important it becomes. But I would say probably at the risk of sounding grandiose, the most important thing I got from Cutco was like economic freedom, because I was willing to bet on myself and I had the sales skills. I could basically do anything I wanted in the economy. I could start.
Yeah, I wonder if you would have went the startup route if you didn't, learn to bet on yourself here.
Well, definitely not. Absolutely not. I would probably be working in consulting or software engineering somewhere. I always knew I wanted to start a business, but like I never would have had the confidence or the idea to start a business at this point without without Cutco. Like, again, I would trade my business degree for it to go back and sell those knives. I only could keep one. I would keep the summer at Cutco.
Awesome. What would you say some of your most fond memories with Vector and Cutco were?
Yeah. There's so many.
Which, by the way, one thing that I know I say this to all the time, but just seeing your progression in speaking, in public speaking, was one of the most, like, I remember that when you first got promoted to pilot, you gave a talk and it was like, oh, this might be a little rough. And then the next time you gave a talk and I was like, Joe might be the best speaker. And just thinking of like where you started and how good you got was, that's really what Vector Train is about, is like people actually stepping out of their comfort zone and getting better in areas of their life that translate, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Like the first talk I had to give, which was just in front of like the very beginnings of our team, was the PR talk with like 6 people in the room. And I was so nervous that the paper in my hand with my notes on it was shaking. Like I couldn't hold it still. It was rough. But like 4 months later, 5 months later, I was speaking at Cutco headquarters in front of the region manager, like all the division managers, all the districts and all the branches. And after it, I had several people come up and say that was one of the best talks they've ever heard at Olean, the company headquarters. And like, just like, what other company do you have the opportunity to go from like not being a manager to speaking in front of like the basically entire
President
region
and
orders?
CEO and owner of the company.
Yeah, CEO or a company there too. Like
The whole board of directors was in the room.
yeah, so cool. And it was so much fun. And I use that now at Zero. Like when I'm evangelizing Zero as a company, now I'm the one who goes and speaks on behalf of the company all over the country. I mean, I travel at least 2 or 3 times a month to conferences, to this and that, to evangelize Zero in front of potential customers.
Awesome. That's awesome. So here's a question is, what advice would you give to somebody who's considering working with us?
Yeah. 2 things. Number 1, don't treat it like a job, treat it more like a sport. Meaning it's not something where you just clock in, clock out like a shift at a camp as a counselor or a job at McDonald's. Treat it like a sport where you're not focused on just getting through the day, focused on performing. And that's number 1. Number 2 is try and really understand the reason behind the things that you're taught. So like, for example, in the pre-close price conditioning, or I think it's referred to as the cost comparison.
Price comparison, yeah.
Yeah, price comparison. Like, why do we talk about how important it is to do that word for word? Particularly that section. I mean, the whole thing's important to just follow the script in your first couple demos. But why is that one especially important? It's because that's what price conditions the customer and makes Cutco sound cheap, like a great deal, and makes them excited about buying at the end. Like, once you understand why that's used, you can use that in so many other contexts. Like, I literally took the Cutco price comparison and inserted that into Zero when we were selling Zero. I used that same thing when I was selling like my first 2 softwares to managers and to Cutco corporate. Same thing in recruiting. Like, you can price condition someone when you're trying to recruit them on salary. It's like, right now in the market, people are generally paying like 150, 160 for this role, but like, we believe in really taking care of our employees. So we're actually going to offer you 180, 190, whatever it might be, right? And makes people feel like they're getting a great deal. Once you understand why something is the way it is, you can take it and apply it to other things in your life. That's just one example. I could list off a bunch others, but that's kind of the second most critical piece. Treat it like a sport and understand the foundation behind the things you're taught.
It's funny because I've heard so many people that either went on to do sales in another capacity or to start their own company talk about they just took the Cutco demo and inserted their product or service, and that is how they got it started. And I mean, it works, right? We've sold a good amount, and that infrastructure is there. So I'm going to go through and I will, basically just different areas of training, and any quick tips you would have in any of those areas for a rep who's in training.
Sure.
So do you have any just general training tips for, rep in training?
Yeah. Let's see. I would say, obviously outside of just like listen to your manager, they know what you're talking about, especially if your manager is Owen. I think he's one of actually the best sales trainers of all the Cutco managers that I've worked with. They have sort of skill spikes in different areas. And I think just sales training in general, Owen is one of the best that I've ever worked with on that. So like he knows what he's talking about. Listen to what he's saying. The second thing is, in particular, like one of the most important things for me, like what clicked, the two kind of big lessons I took away were, number one, people don't buy because they understand, they buy because they feel understood. So really kind of pay attention to what the customer is saying. You'll learn more about this in advanced training, like how to do objection handling, so on and so forth. But like really make sure that you're listening to the customer. And then the second is people can tell whether or not you believe they should buy, and either way, they'll agree with you. So one of the really important things to pay attention to in training is why Cutco is actually such a great choice for customers. Because it's so important for you to understand that so you can sell authentically in the home and you're not just making things up. And to make sure that I nail this point about listening to the customer, like to use a poker analogy, you have to learn how to play the cards before you can play the man, right? And so like, don't worry about tailoring the pitch to the specific customer until like, you know, the script basically word by word. Just learn it. Like, I read off the freaking script for my first entire weekend. And then after that weekend, I knew everything by heart. And then I started tailoring the pitch to the customer. I started rewording things a little bit to make it sound more authentic. But that's after I understood the why and knew it by heart. So the changes that I were making were improvements, at least for me. If you try and make tweaks before you understand it fully, you will actually tweak it in the wrong direction and it will be worse. So those are kind of the main tips. Really pay attention to why Cutco actually is the right choice for people. And then two, like listen and learn until you know the cards like the back of your hand, and then really start playing the man.
I love that. What about a rep in training? What about like tips for them with their names list?
Yeah. I mean, like with the names list, that's your first chance to impress your manager. There are going to be a lot of people in your training class that don't really take it seriously and just kind of do the minimum amount or less. But if you really nail the names list, you're going to impress your manager, and B, set yourself up for success. This is really your first opportunity to treat this like a sport and focus on performing well. Like if you think about it, right? Like if you assume you're going to book demos with half of them, you're going to close like half of those, and the close rate is much higher, and you're going to sell a $300 average order on them. Like each one of those names is worth what? 300 times 0.5 times 0.5, and then times what? A 10% commission to start. Like each one of those is worth almost $8. And then as you get your promotion,
it goes up from there,
losing like 30%, each one of those names starts to become worth like $23, $24. And just imagine every single name you get an extra dollar, an extra $7.
And then the referrals from those and the experience and the confidence that comes. That's awesome. what about what tips would you give for a rep? I know you talked about your fast start. So just so you know, the fast start now is 13 days. When you were a rep, when I was a rep, it was 10 days. And obviously, just for anyone who is getting started, it's a little contest where you can win a bunch of stuff. And what tips would you give for a rep who's about to start their fast start?
I mean, go all out for the fast start, basically. Um, like the just actually, I'll simplify it. Do as many freaking demos as you can. I had no idea that I was going to go ahead and drop 9K and set the record, at least for that year, in my office and make like several $100s.
You made almost $2,000.
Yeah, $2,000. Yeah. I forget the math at this point because the promotions happen so quickly that they stack. Like made $2,000 in the first 10 days. That was insane. I made $2,000, like less than $2,000 in an entire summer, the summer before. I never expected that. And like, look, you might not be able to sell $2,000, but the only way you get to find out is if you do as many demos as you possibly can. And that's just what I focused on, was the inputs. Don't worry about the scoreboard. Just focus on the inputs, make the calls, do the demos, follow the script, and look, you have a chance at selling $2,000 with it, or making $2,000 with it or more. That's my advice.
And then in terms of obviously reps, there's like three main skills, right? There's phoning to book the appointments, there's closing and making sales, and there's referrals. For any of those, or it could be multiple, are there any tips that stand out that you feel like were extraordinarily valuable for you that you could pass on?
Big question.
I feel like phoning might be your thing because you made an app on phoning and being efficient.
Yeah, so I guess on phoning, what I would say is, does Vector Impact have like the queue feature, have a queuing feature? Yeah, sweet. So I don't know exactly how it works. So some of this might not be applicable, but like we actually did a full study on this, where we had people queue up, at least 30 people before they started phoning, and then people who weren't allowed to queue. And the people who queued up, 30 people, made twice as many calls per hour as the people who weren't able to queue, and booked 63% more demos. And the reason for that is the part about phoning that's stressful and the part about phoning that takes time is deciding who to call next.
Yeah.
But if you make all those decisions up front, first of all, they're easier because you're not about to hit dial. And second of all, it makes phoning a breeze, super easy. You don't have to worry about making any decisions. You just hit next and you go. That's going to make you way, way more effective. And it's going to make phoning more pleasant, less anxiety inducing. Second thing I would say is like when you are writing in your goals, when you're going through goal sharing, don't make shit up. Like actually take time to think about what really authentically resonates with you. And if you are writing down goals that don't like make you stir a little bit, then like you need to cross them out and write down new ones that do make you stir. Because at the end of the day, if you can't share your goals authentically, it's going to be harder to get referrals. It's going to be harder to close deals. But if you can share your goals authentically, it'll be magnetic. And people will want to give you referrals. They will be open to buying from you. No one's ever going to buy something for you like just to help you out. That might have happened to me once across like hundreds of demos. But they'll be at least open to buying from you, and it'll be easier sale, making a better decision for them if you share your goals and they understand why you're here. And so that's I think the highest leverage thing you can do is like have authentic goals, especially in the beginning when you're basically the entire rest of the demo is fully scripted, right?
I agree completely. I think that the connection that generates when you're authentic and they're tied into you opens the door for everything, but especially referrals at the end. So that's awesome, dude. So those are
sometimes like have like don't give up when the customer says no first, like to the first set. That's another thing. Like even if you don't think it's going to work, just follow the approach,
Yeah.
focus on the inputs, because a lot of times it does work. I can't tell you how many times after I got told no the first time, I was like, okay, there's no way this person's buying anything. And then they end up buying the galley set. Like I had a customer literally say, there's no way we could afford this. I'm not even sure we need all these knives. Like we're trying to put 2 kids through college, so on and so forth. And I just followed the approach that I was taught in advanced training to objection cycle that. It was something like, yeah, totally understand. My mom is putting 2 kids through college right now also, or at least she's putting one and saving up for the other. Like cooks a lot, but doesn't use every single freaking tool. So you got another set that might be perfect for you. It's called the galley set. It's a few less pieces for a lot less money. In fact, without the table knife, it's going to come in about half the price. Here's what it looks like. It still comes with X, Y, Z, and whatever. And it's actually only going to be whatever price. She's like, okay, let's do the galley set. And it was like, how? I thought I was getting nothing. And she just bought
Yeah.
like an $800 set. It's like, just follow the approach and don't give up.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of the times the reason they're saying no is because they don't know that there's a better option for them. So, they can't say yes to something that they don't know exists. So it's like, why not just show them all the different options? And if one makes sense, great. And if none makes sense, hey, at least they know. So that's awesome, dude. So those are the topics I want to go through. Is there anything that you want to finish off with? Any other topics or thoughts just to wrap us up?
If at any point you feel like your growth is stagnating, like you're not learning as much as you were like when you first started, as you get into it, ask your manager for like recordings or materials provided or created by some of the best people in the business. Like after my fast start, I sort of felt like that. My manager sat me down and showed me a recording of how one of the highest average order reps in Cutco history did his demo. And I took like 2 or 3 things from that doubled my average order every like overnight. And all of a sudden, every demo I do, I'm making twice as much money. And so that's one tip. And then the second tip is definitely also do management at some point. If you ever are given the opportunity by your manager, you will learn a ton also doing management. Chance to really run your own mini business. There's no better business training than that.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to stop the recording